pray. Eternal Father, we just ask that you be with us today, that what's being shared, it's from you, it's your words, not mine. Thank you for guiding us. Thank you for filling us with your Spirit, and help us to walk in your ways and in your truth. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen. There's really just two paths. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I'm curious about a lot of things. How many were here? I think it was back in February. How many heard part of this? Okay. How many were not here and everything? Okay. Do y'all see all the other hands? So if it's okay, I'm going to do that part, and then I'll share with you something new. Is that all right? Okay. And the ones who were here before, just like you hadn't seen it yet. All right. All right. Here we go. Okay. I promise I am pushing the button. We're almost, there we go, yay. Curious George meets Jurassic Park. Curious George, this dinosaur discovery. So I was curious, again, with my journey, being allowed to go back to church, and then when I was at the C-Lab, a friend of mine gave me a Bible, and this was like 32 years ago, and I still have the Bible, and I take really good care of it. I just don't want it to ever tear or do whatever on that. And so, anyway, as I told you before, I'd read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John over and over again, but the things I was familiar with was science. And so I was curious, like dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, they got their name really in 1842. I thought it was like hundreds of years earlier. I was just curious. And it really wasn't that long ago, 1842. So worldviews on dinosaurs. God created the dinosaurs. Another worldview? I don't know. Okay? Is that okay? Unless you get in a time machine, we won't really know for sure. So anyway, Jurassic Park. All right, so this one, for those that don't know me, of course, I already said how I was raised, but I used to be a deep sea explorer. We used to go down in submersibles. We'd go through, which was unfortunate with Ocean Gate. They were down really deep ocean. Ours, we'd pop down to about 2,000 feet, and people have died on this submarine before, so we knew what we're doing. You know, we knew what we're getting into when you got into the submersible. I was in multiple expeditions in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, diving in hydrothermal vent communities. And so we'd go through drills that if something goes wrong, God forbid, right? But anyway, we'd go through decompression chamber drills, and we had, if something went terribly wrong, we had 4 days of life support, and that was it. You know, where you wouldn't freeze, have hypothermia, and we had a scrubber it's like a charcoal scrubber, remove the CO2. So anyway, all this was bringing back a lot of memories this past week with that unfortunate accident. Anyway, there's a picture of me. Yeah, I had a mullet. We're trying to bring them back. So mullets are cool. Anyway, that was back a while back. Okay. And then after the different expeditions, I'd go to the Smithsonian Institute and deliver the specimens up there, discovered a new species. I always wanted to discover a new species, and by the time it happened, I could care less. I still don't know what they named it. Anyway, there's one researcher up there. I'll probably call him next week and say, what did y'all ever name that thing? But on this particular time, I asked my older brother, Andy. Now, he's an atheist, all right? But I asked him, I was like, hey, would you like to go to the Smithsonian with me? And he said, sure. So we went up together, and we walk in, and a number of you guys have been to the Smithsonian, right? Yeah, and you see, remember the elephant when you walk in? And then off to the right is the marine exhibit. And anyway, I don't want to go off on a rabbit trail. So anyway, I asked him, where do you want to go? What do you want to look at? My meeting's going to happen, but we can look at a couple of things, and then you tell me what exhibit you're looking at, and I'll just meet up with you in a few hours. And he says, I want to see dinosaurs. I was like, I didn't even know they had a dinosaur exhibit. I was like, what about the marine exhibit, the ocean? I can show you this part. Nope. I was like, what about the Hope Diamond? It's here. Nope. I was like, okay, what do you want to see? Dinosaurs. All right, I had to ask a docent, how do you find the dinosaurs? Where are they? Do you have them? And he said, yeah. And so these were the people I was meeting with, the scientists. But anyway, so we made our way to the dinosaur exhibit. When we walked in, I was on the second floor, and I was looking down, and I was like, wow, I didn't see him before, and here it is, this dinosaur thing. I was just blown away by a number of things. And so one was, you've got T-Rex, and we all have heard about T-Rex. And so Barnum Brown, he was the man who discovered T-Rex in 1902. So it wasn't that long ago that they discovered the T-Rex. And so 3 years later, they did the reconstruction of the bones, and it would be complete. And so this is a picture of the guy right here. And so in 1905, this guy, Henry Fairfield Osborne, he's president of the American Museum of Natural History. When the senior class from CA, we go up to New York, I'll do a 30-minute tour, of these types of things at the museum. But anyway, he's the one who named the T-Rex in 1905. It was just a little over 100 years ago. And it means king of the tyrant lizards. So, but when I'm looking at the skeleton, I noticed that disproportionate, and we make fun of them, right? Arm length to body size of the T-Rex. Little T-Rex. Everybody do the T-Rex? And so there were a couple other things that I noticed about it. And I noticed the keel. Of course, I don't have a pointer on this thing, but can you see that big sternum, that big keel that's on a bird? And if you look at the T-Rex, it has one too. When I first saw that, look, my whole background was evolutionary comparative anatomy. It was all about evolution. And so, and when I was taking these classes, I just pray to God, because I had no Bible, show me you're real where they're telling me you're not. And so when I'm looking at this thing, instantly I go, T-Rex looks like a bird. Look at that keel. And another thing that birds have are gizzards. And so they'll take up little stones and help them to grind up food. So they have found, off to the right, those are called gastroliths. Those are fossilized ribs, this herbivorous dinosaur, one that would eat plants, and then those stones are called gastroliths. So they're smooth, they're kind of roundish. That's where a gizzard would have been, is what they say. Even though soft tissue is gone, they have gizzard stones. So anyway, gastroliths, bird-like. So also at this time, that there was this idea that dinosaurs were actually warm-blooded. Most of us, when we were kids, we were taught that dinosaurs were cold-blooded. They needed the sun to heat them up before they could move around and go and eat something. But now at this time, back in the 1980s and 90s, there were two people that were a big debate. Were dinosaurs warm-blooded, like humans and mammals, or were they cold-blooded, like reptiles? And that'd be Jack Horner and Bob Bakker. Not this Jack Horner, not that Bob Bakker, okay? Yeah, it's gone the way of Alex Trebek from Jeopardy. Oh, the good old days. But anyway, so this one, paleontologist Jack Horner. We're going to mention him about 3 times today, okay? And Bob Bakker. You guys may know Bob Bakker from his famous, I guess, brother, really sister-in-law. They dropped the K in the name, Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker. So that's his relative. Okay, anyway. So I told my brother when I was looking at this T-Rex, I said I would not be surprised if T-Rex mostly had bird DNA. You're just based on what it's looking like. And so side note on DNA, all right? So Gregor Mendel's known as the father of genetics. Okay, fine. He did these experiments with peas, and he crossed them, and he had all these purple peas, he had white peas, he'd cross them, he'd come up with purple peas, then he'd take those offspring, cross them, and then he'd have purple and white. And so he wrote a paper, he presented his work on February the 8th and March the 8th of 1865. He talked about his findings. In 1866, he published a paper. Those dates are important. We'll come back to it, okay? So Mendel's work was at first rejected by the scientific community. They didn't quite understand it. But when he died, later in 1900, his work was rediscovered. And this led to Watson and Crick and Rosalind Franklin discovering that DNA is the backbone of inheritance. Gregor Mendel didn't know what that mechanism was. He just knew something was going on. That was in 1953. They won the Nobel Prize. So what does DNA do? Sorry, you might get a headache on this. The DNA is unwound, a copy is made, it goes out of the cell into another part of the cell, and then proteins are built. That is the instructions. The blueprint, the DNA is the blueprint. So the out product of this would be your muscle, your brain tissue, your blood cells. Plants have it, with their leaves, different things. So it makes the organism what it is, the DNA, okay? All right. So natural selection. That's all I heard when I was in college. Evolution, you know the words, survival of the fittest, the catchphrases, natural selection. So my question is, what's the evolutionary advantage of these little arms? It didn't have anything. Now, Jack Horner, he came up with one. He said, I know for certain T-Rex was 100% scavenger. He said T-Rex would use these because they couldn't find a mechanism for it at all. It's like you couldn't scratch your back. You can't reach your mouth with it. They're just here. And so anyway, what he said is that T-Rex was a scavenger, like a possum, only bigger. And so anyway, so the T-Rex would come up to something dead, a carcass of a Deinonychus or a Hadrosaur or something, and it would, because the arms are kind of underneath, it would take those fingers, those claws, and then cut up the hadrosaur or whatever, and then step back and take a bite. Okay, I'm with you on that. I was like, really? And so, really, that's the best you got. And so, anyway, he says, I know for certain T-Rex was 100% scavenger. Paleontologists around the world cringed because we don't really believe that. It's almost like this. One of my favorite love stories is Jaws. Yeah, I know, you're like, how's that a love? It's a love story because it's about a fish that loves to eat people. So with Jaws in this movie, it's not like the shark will come up to like a sea lion or something and just hit it with a fin or two, knock it around a little bit, and then come back and take a bite. No, it's chomp, chomp, swallow, okay? All right, so anyway, I like Gary Larson, The Far Side, the scientific stuff. And if you notice, here's a family of T-Rex, and they're sitting around the dinner table, and they go, hey, I'm trying to pass the potatoes. Remember, my forearms are just as useless as yours. So even the biologists with comics got it. Like, what is the function of these things? Anyway, Steven Spielberg, because Jack Horner made that statement, he had a character dressed like Jack Horner, eaten by a T-Rex, okay? So anyway, he says, scavenger, huh? Run, Jack, run. So when I returned to the Sea Lab after seeing these dinosaurs for the first time and seeing the T-Rex, I was impressed to read Genesis, then Deuteronomy, and also another book called Spiritual Gifts. I've got it out in the car. I was afraid if I brought it in, I would leave it. So anyway, I don't know where I got the Spiritual Gifts book from. I don't know how I came into possession of it, but I've had it for decades, and so I'm reading it. All right, so this is what it says. I'm back at the Sea Lab, and I'm curious about these dinosaurs. And so Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 34, it says, as Adam came forth from the hand of his creator, he was more than twice as tall as men now living upon the earth. Eve was not quite as tall as Adam, okay? Her head reached a little above his shoulders. That's the next little quotes from Patriarchs and Prophets. It goes, Adam's height was much greater than that of men who now inhabit the earth. Eve was somewhat less in stature. Okay. So are evidence of giants in the Bible? Remember, I'm reading it for the first time, okay? It's like, are there giants? Okay, fine. You look in 1 Samuel, and there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath at Gath, and whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And I was curious, okay, how much is 6 cubits in a span? That comes out to be about 9 feet 6. They said somewhere between 9 feet and 11 feet, but they take the average 9 feet 6 inches. Average soldier height about that time, 5'8". Okay, so there's your giant. What about Numbers 13:33? And it says, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Giants. Deuteronomy 3:11, King Og, for only King Og of Bashan remained of the remnant of giants. There was a whole race of giants. To have a king, you've got to have a people. And this guy was king of the giants. Okay, so here's some things that we can infer. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. I think it's important. That's listed there. It's like, well, you're not sleeping on straw. You're not sleeping on like a wooden bed. It's an iron bed. That's got to be expensive. It's like steel. Your bed is made out of steel. 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. That's 13 feet, 6 inches long, and 6 feet wide. So that infers King Og's height, if you think of it. King Og, last of the giants. So think about it. Adam, King Og, and T-Rex would have been around the same height, because T-Rex at the shoulder, they said it was about 14, 13, 12 feet high. Length about 40 feet, but the height, maybe about the size of Adam and King Og, if you think about it. So now then we consider Adam and Eve. So who taught Adam and Eve? Yeah, God, Jesus, in the garden. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses. So Jesus, I know it's a different garden, but in the Garden of Eden, God communed with Adam and Eve. And so what was the first job of Adam and Eve, of Adam? Name the animals. Okay, so let's reason it. Okay, so consider a new kitten or a new puppy. You wanted one all your life, okay? So now you got one, and you know what you're going to name it. You're going to name it Fred. So you go to bed, and you go, good night, Fred. Your parents are going to say, hey, the dog can stay in here or the cat can stay in here. Fine. Okay, good night, Fred. Okay, good night. So you wake up the next morning and you go, you've always wanted that dog. You named it Fred. The next morning you wake up and you go, now what did I call you? No, Fred has meaning. Fred has meaning, okay? For whatever reason you named it Fred, that has meaning to you. I don't think it was a flippant remark that Adam named the animals what he named them. That it was done on purpose, and I think it's a sign of superintelligence, okay? And I mentioned before, but I don't know, to me, where I was and coming upon this stuff and everything, it just screamed awesomeness of God, was that I can imagine that we were in heaven, and I told you this little story before, but anyway, where your friends, you're gathered around, and you always wanted to pet a giraffe, and here comes one, you're with your friends, you've seen Jesus, Jesus is awesome, your friends and relatives have gone on before, new people you've met, and time has passed, and here's this giraffe, and your friends, they go, hey, look, you always wanted to pet a giraffe. And as you're saying this, a voice behind you goes, well, it's actually giraffe. And you turn, you're staring at a kneecap, and you look up and you go, oh, hey, Adam. And he goes, yeah. We go, that's a giraffe. And he goes, no, originally I named it Giraffe. Over time, things changed a little bit, the way y'all pronounced it. Think about it, Sabbath, Shabbat, Sabbato, Saturday. And I'm like, oh, okay. Superintelligence. Like if you name something, you don't forget it. There was more than one animal in the garden. So in Luke 17, it goes, when the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. Okay, Noah's time. Satan can do all things except for what? Create life. Satan can't do that. So what's just short of creating life? Yeah, mutating or modifying it, okay? So create life, okay. So with evolution, on this one, I've mentioned this, but when I was looking at this evolution thing a number of years ago, you can see where you start off like as a worm or whatever, and as it goes through, evolution is hide in time. Give it billions of years, anything is possible. You talk to statisticians and they'll say, no, it's still an impossibility. So anyway, on the bottom part, it says, man has been a worm. Isn't that what Satan would have you believe about yourself? That you're nothing special? That you're nothing at all? Like you're just a worm? You have no meaning, you have no purpose? But think about it. Every person is made in the image and likeness of God. You are special, you have purpose. So when you get down and out, when you're not feeling good and you're in the blues or whatever and everything, you're special. There is no other creature in the universe that's been created in the image of God but you. You're created in the very image of God. You are special. You have purpose. I mentioned before about amalgam. So amalgam is a mixture, a blend, amalgamation, compound, admixture. When we're mixing things together, amalgam, blending. We don't use that word very much. But in Spiritual Gifts, page 64, volume 3, remember the date, 1864. It goes, but if there was one sin above another, which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. So look, I'm reading in this. I just got back from the Smithsonian Institute. I'm reading it, and I'm like, nah, that can't work because of biochemistry. Anyway, I was very skeptical. I'm sorry, I'm new, all right? I was very skeptical. All right, fine. Every species of animal, this is Spiritual Gifts, volume 3, page 75. It goes, every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. The confused species, which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, that blending, were destroyed by the flood. Okay. I tucked this away for 30 years, okay? It's just in the back of my head because no one wanted to know about biology and biochemistry. I just tucked it away. All right. So what I thought was interesting is that this work was published in 1864. Gregor Mendel first presented his ideas on inheritance in 1865. I'm just saying, God led before Mendel about inheritance and this amalgamation and this blending way before. All right. So how difficult is it to genetically modify an organism? E. coli. I mean, we just did this a couple of weeks ago. So you can take glow-in-the-dark jellyfish and take E. coli, a bacteria, and at Collegedale Academy, you don't need a big computer. You just need some petri dishes, some agar, and you just take the plasmid, the DNA material from the jellyfish, you introduce it with hot and cold, open up the DNA for these bacteria, and then the bacteria glow. So now it's something new. It is bacteria, but it is also carrying genes from a jellyfish. So it has traits of a jellyfish. Okay, so it's not that hard, and it's gotten easier to do with this thing called CRISPR. So we consider T-Rex. Rawr. Okay, T-Rex. I can't do a good T-Rex. I'll try. About 13 feet tall, 40 feet long. And ask yourself, for those who are new, is like, how many T-Rex skeletons have they found? I'll help you. 11. There's only one that's mostly complete, and that's Sue, and that was 80%. So, and that was relatively recent find. So based on just these fragments of bones, they created this whole world, this whole ecosystem. Anyway, do you remember the report? They did this a number of years ago about this Happy Meal. They had these little cheeseburgers, and they took a picture of it each day for like 6 months and didn't decompose. All right, fine. There's a missing French fry up there, about 3 months into it. So the photographer had to get hungry. Fossilized rib. This is from a manatee, and it is solid rock. Got it from the Peace River Formation down near Tampa Bay. Anyway, I imagine that given enough time, even the Happy Meal hamburger will turn to stone. Don't you think, if you gave it long enough, that burger will turn to like a stone. That looks like a Big Mac. It's a tire print. Okay, introducing Dr. Schweitzer. This is awesome. So they were digging, back in 2007, they spent a couple of summers excavating a T-Rex. This was at the Hell's Creek Formation in Montana. Now, my son Christian's here. He's back from Poland. He's doing mission work in Poland. But you and Caleb and I, we did a dino dig a couple of years ago at the Hell's Creek Formation working with hadrosaurs. And they actually had muscles. Remember those? The ligaments? We were actually, I should have brought one. Yeah, but we found dinosaur muscle. It was stone, but we got to keep some dinosaur muscle from these hadrosaurs. And so anyway, they're at the Hell's Creek Formation there in Montana. And they've been excavating this T-Rex. And so Dr. Schweitzer, she just finished her doctorate. And so she asked Jack Horner, he was project lead, could she drill into this femur and take a sample of the minerals inside that bone? And Jack Horner just went off. He started yelling at her, saying some bad language to her, trying to make her feel really small. One of the things he says, just because you got your PhD, you think you know something. You think you're better than everybody. Which she didn't. She was just curious. So anyway, they wrap it, and she kind of goes off dejected. They wrap that exposed T-Rex bone in plaster of Paris. They wrap it up, and then they bring in the helicopter. Here's the cable, and here comes the helicopter, and they're lifting this thing up. They're going to put it on a flatbed diesel truck, and they're going to take it to the lab for analysis. Okay, they're going to put this thing back together again. But while it was being raised in the air, the femur that was in this plaster of Paris slipped out from the sling. I think it was a God thing. And it went, boom. Jack Horner's like, he couldn't believe it. Here's this thing, breaks in half. They go up to it. Well, I'll show you. Horner tells Schweitzer, I guess you can get your sample now. Then he storms off. Okay? It's broken in half. To her surprise, Dr. Schweitzer found soft tissue. Soft tissue. It's not stone. It was soft tissue. And they would say that it smelled like rotting tissue on the inside. Evolutionary scientists immediately, it's almost like that with Jack Horner when he goes, I know T-Rex was 100% scavenger. No, you can't say that unless you got a time machine. Anyway, evolutionary scientists around the world were like, we can't explain this. Genie's out of the bottle and everything. But this is impossible. They said they would never believe. These were faith terms. Impossible? Never believe? They said they would never believe that the soft tissue could be from the T-Rex because the fossil was 65 million years old. Okay, it's 65. That's what they said. Okay, it's 65 million. Okay, were you there? No, but I was told it's 65 million. So, all right. So this happened a number of years ago. Curious George. How many of you guys have read some of Curious George stuff? Okay, fine. Okay, there you go. All right, so when my son Christian, who's here, I guess he was around 3. We'd read to our kids at night. We'd do our worship. We'd read them a bedtime story, whatever. Zen and I would take turns between our 2 kids each night, whoever. And so, reading Curious George. And on the front of the book, it goes, Curious George was a curious little monkey. And Christian goes, it's not a monkey. And I was like, no, it says right here, it says, Curious George is a monkey. And it's like, no, he's not. I was like, well, what is he? And he goes, he's an ape. And I was like, why do you say that? Because monkeys have tails. Apes don't. Think of your chimpanzee, your gorilla, your orangutan. Those are apes. No tail, okay? And I was like, this is what I mean by dogma. We're told something over and over again. We don't question it. These people were told over and over again, 65 million, 100 million. They don't question it. If you question it in college, you're ridiculed. I've been there, done that. I mean, I didn't say anything. I just watched what happened to other people. Yeah. So, yeah. So, anyway. But they went in and they said, by all rules of paleontology, such traces of life should have drained out of those bones. It's a matter of faith among scientists that soft tissue can survive at most a few tens of thousands of years, not the 65 million that they've been told that since this T-Rex walked the Hell Creek Formation. But Schweitzer ignores the dogma. This has allowed her to see things other paleontologists have missed and potentially to shatter fundamental assumptions about how much we can learn from the past. Maybe, evolutionists, the world's not 1 billion years old. Maybe the dinosaurs have been around for a few thousands of years. Specimens were sent to independent labs around the world, even though all these evolutionists said, no way, no way, no way, we'll never believe it. The test results confirmed Dr. Schweitzer's analysis. And now what are you going to do with it? So what Schweitzer found, she said, this is National Geographic Daily News, she said, it got me real curious as to exceptional preservation. If particles of that one dinosaur are able to hang around for 65 million years, maybe the textbooks were wrong about fossilization. And what she's getting into is that, I found out a year or two ago, she's a Christian. And she's got to be very careful in how she says things to where she's still taken with credibility. But we're looking at thousands of years, literally is what they're saying, as opposed to millions of years. So on this one, this is a blood vessel. And you can actually see a red blood cell within it. This is from that sample. This one has multiple red blood cells within it, numerous blood cells from that T-Rex. So then they did, Dr. John Asara, he's from Harvard University. And so when they did the comparison, he said there's more than a 90% probability that T-Rex, the grouping of T-Rex with living birds is real. Okay. So dinosaur soft tissue, it was sequenced, and they said similar to chicken proteins. T-Rex genetic makeup overlaps more with ostriches and chickens than modern reptiles and alligators. We always thought, okay, alligator, maybe these used to be dinosaurs, whatever, but no, birds. Isn't that 30 years ago? I told my brother, I wouldn't be surprised if T-Rex was mostly bird DNA. Now then, they've taken the protein and then dialed it back to figure out what the DNA sequence was. Bird. So there we go. Da 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 da. Remember that with the amber? Jurassic Park. So the premise of Jurassic Park is that a mosquito that had been feeding, it's not really feeding, but anyway, I won't get into all the science of it, but it had taken some blood from a dinosaur. So this scientist ingeniously drills into the amber. You got this pine sap that dropped on a mosquito that had gotten blood from a dinosaur, and so he drills into it, extracts that blood, and then engineers the dinosaurs. That's the whole idea with Jurassic Park. So the question is, will we ever have a real-life Jurassic Park? Okay. Is this the new part? Is this new? Is this the new part? Okay, good. Yay. All right. So anyway, yay, genetics labs. Money, 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 right? Oh, there's our friend Jack Horner. Let me see. Where are we with him? Yeah, T-Rex 100% scavenger. No, you can't drill into that thing. Soft tissue. Jack and a chicken. Okay, fine. Here we go. Jack Horner, number 3. So Jack Horner in 2009, he had a book came out. It says, How to Build a Dinosaur. Extinction Doesn't Have to Be Forever. He says, he describes his plan to recreate a dinosaur by genetically nudging the DNA of a chicken. It's already there. Now, start thinking about the antediluvians. So it was in the days of Noah. Every organism that God created, a representation went on the ark. The confused species God did not make it on the ark. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall the end of time be. Is it starting to click a little bit? So they're taking the chicken DNA, and this is his other book, Chickenosaurus, not coming to a KFC near you. Yeah, the Happy Meal that bites back. So, yeah, Chickenosaurus. So, anyway, he did this. There's a whole TED talk on it, but what he's doing is They're saying he's trying to finish the job of modifying this dinosaur that acts, walks, and looks like a dinosaur but hatches from a chicken egg. So that's what they're working on right now. Instead of perfectly preserved DNA, in amber, as in Jurassic Park films, Horner proposed reactivating ancient DNA. Why do we say ancient? It acts like it's DNA, it's still there. Even the active DNA, I mean, why don't you just call that ancient as well? I mean, DNA is DNA. But they're trying to bury it in evolution again. Watch the wording. The phrasing is on purpose. Reactivating, we should just say reactivating or turning on a genetic sequence in chickens to give the creatures dinosaur-like features. And what they've already done, they've got the things with hands now, and they've got part of the tails been developed. They're still working on it, okay? But they have made progress. He believes that they can create a dinosaur within the next 5 years. Da, 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 da. So in the days of, as in the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Is it that we're repeating ourselves? Advances in genetic engineering. Used to, this was way out there, but here you go. Now, this is where they do a balloon thing. They kind of blow up like the different continents in the map of where you have genetically modified organisms. The United States is huge. Asia and Europe, maybe not as much, but South America. I wonder why South America? You probably eat GMOs every day. That's the percent of genetically modified organisms, the total crop. Soybeans, 94%. Cotton, 90%. Corn, 88%. You go to your grocery store, 80-something plus percent has been genetically modified. Transgenics. So you can take a peek here. Wow. So, but that's just the beginning. They've genetically modified where you can see through a frog. They have this. It's a little bit of grapefruit, some lemon, a kiwi. Glow-in-the-dark fish. That's been out, I'm going to guess, about 15 or 20 years. They used to sell them at Walmart. These were mice. Like under black light conditions, they glow. A glow-in-the-dark cat. So where do you draw the line? So this is Ruppy, genetically modified dog that glows red in ultraviolet light. The first transgenic dog. So they've taken genes from a jellyfish, and now they have it in this mammal. And then they try and hang it on like, well, the world's population is starving. So if we could genetically modify fish to where they're bigger, then we could solve that problem. Well, another problem is like, okay, so you got a giant fish, you got something, what is it eating? How is it getting that big? You could wipe out a whole ecosystem by introducing this fish. Think fire ants, even though they're not eating everything except for us when we're on a picnic. So this was big. You know, this shows you how they've, crossed species to come up with this hybrid giant salmon. They did this with a rhesus monkey. That's the rhesus. They had 13 embryos, and one went to delivery. And under black light conditions, this was introducing a gene from a jellyfish. If they're doing a gene with a jellyfish, what else are they doing? What do we not know about? Okay. How about this one? Human milk from genetically modified cows. Chinese scientists have spliced human genes with cows. They did about 300 dairy cows, so they will produce human milk. I'm getting disturbed. I don't know about you. Yeah. Human serum albumin, we need this, for our blood. Helps to remove harmful toxins from our blood and helps to regulate blood pressure. We need it. There's a world shortage. So what have they done? Dr. Yang, scientist at Wuhan. Okay. So what they did was they've spliced human genes. I'll just pop over to it with rice. So the rice plants are producing human blood serum. And then they separate it out, and then they said we can solve the supply issues. They're already doing it. Remember when we said the spirit of prophecy, where it says the amalgamation of man and beast, confused species everywhere? Back in the early 90s, that didn't make sense to me. I was like, okay, I'm not sure if that's real. I'm just being real with you guys. I don't know if I'm buying it because I'm new to this and everything. But with new science, it's like, whoa, 150 years ago, spot on. This is how you use CRISPR, basically. It's not like you just pull it out with the tweezers. It's at the nano level, but you can remove DNA sequence from one organism and put another splice in its place. I had a former student, a student teacher, who, as part of their science classes, he was able to visit a CRISPR unit. He had to go in through all kinds of security background check, went in, observed, and then was able to come back out and was told to keep everything he saw a secret. Really? And so this is a very powerful new genetic tool to where it's easier just to crop out DNA and splice it into something else to produce some weird thing. Mice with human ears, their justification is like, well, combat, you lost an ear, now we can regrow an ear and we can have it put on for you. It's a justification. Here's a guy who calls himself an artist. He's got one on his arm. He can't hear out of it. But anyway, but there you go. Well, there's your mouse, and off to the left is a brain. Okay, that's sort of like an image of a human brain. Dr. Weissman, a couple of years ago, they've already created mice with 100% human brains. They've done this. They're super fast in the maze, and they can't speak like humans or whatever, but they're super fast in problem solving. And he says that, we're just trying to treat diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, so that may have hit somebody in here. And it's like, well, okay, if you can help me with my issue, or I know somebody who's got this. I call it emotional blackmail. You come up with, we're treating this, and therefore you've got to say it's okay, right? Designer babies, they're doing it, but who gets to do it? I'm sorry, who gets to pick the designer baby? Who is it going to cost a lot of money to pick out the genetics of your child? Okay, do you want them tall? Do you want them intelligent? Do you want them athletic? Okay, so who's got that kind of money? Everybody? The people in power already. I'm sorry, I'm just saying it like it is. Like if you've got money, then you could do this. So then their offspring, if they're more intelligent than us, average people, who's going to be the leaders of the future? If you think about it. AI is scary too. AI is super scary. Designer babies is right up there. 2011, this was in UK. In 2008, they had this thing called the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act in the United Kingdom. That UK is not University of Kentucky, okay? This morning in Sabbath school, y'all were talking about UK, and I was like, British? What is she upset about? Like, she doesn't have to swim against these guys, you know, what's her name, Riley or whatever? No, UK is Kentucky. I didn't know. Anyway, here we are, 2008. So this happened in 2009. Non-disclosed experiments. What were they doing? They had 150 human-animal hybrids growing. They had already crossed humans and other animals genetically. The base crime of amalgamation between humans and beasts. This is black and white. What about this one? This is the Daily Mail. You know, they were saying 155, I had 150 on the other one. Admixed embryos, think of the amalgamation, containing both human and animal genetic material. And they buried it in this thing, that Human Fertilization Embryology Act. I thought it was like where people were having trouble conceiving to have a child, okay? But on this one, it's for this hybrid research. They're doing it. And so that's legalized these creations of these hybrids. And what they say is, the people, when they found out about it, said, we had no idea they were doing this. And if it's so great, why were they keeping it such a secret? You know? Because they just had a Planet of the Apes symposium where scientists got together about their concerns about where things were going in the future. Now we're 10 years past this. Can you imagine what's going on now? What they say is that by law, they have to destroy these embryos in 14 days. Okay, fine. If you're the atheist, now look, there are Christian scientists, I get it. But if you're the atheist scientist, your days are numbered. And if you're trying to live forever, if you're trying to manipulate things, why not move from where there's regulation to a place where there's no regulation? You go to countries, you pay them the money, you get wealthy people to fund you. It's like it's set up as a black lab. And I'm not talking about the woof woof, okay? Just the black laboratory, okay? Where you can do your experiments and you don't have to destroy those hybrids. So human-animal hybrids were created in other countries that have little or no regulation whatsoever. So in closing, there are two paths. What do you think about this? Can you think about it? Like humans trying to play God in that first image, and then you have Michelangelo's where you've got Adam and God the Creator. What two paths are we following here? Evolution or creation? So God created man in his image. In his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. That's black and white. Male and female. Boom, done. No questions. Done. As in the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. So we'll repeat these. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 64. But if there was one sin above another, which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion of everywhere. This is satanic. It is absolutely satanic. Satan hates God. You confuse the image of God. He blessed Adam and Eve before the fall, saying, be fruitful and multiply. Now what's going on? Deface the image of God. It's just like Satan's got his graffiti can out there. Every species, this is volume 3, page 75, every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. The confused species, which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed by the flood. To me, it's as clear as it could get. What are we doing? In Genesis, it goes, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Literal creation, not billions of years of evolution. Every person is made in the image and likeness of God. You are special. This is, that again, the creation of Adam by God. And after you have suffered a little while, as it says in John 14, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud. And I will look that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. Remember that covenant. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God is a God of love. Soon, Christ is coming in his kingdom. And notice the rainbow. It's like that promise of the covenant. You had Noah's ark with the rainbow, the promise of the covenant, covenant fulfilled. For the Lord himself would descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. I've got chills. I don't know about you, but I got chills. And it goes, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord. In Revelation it says, and God shall wipe away all tears, not just some, but all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away. Praise God. We're there. Behold, I make all things new. That was the closing. So we're going to sing a song.